So today I'm going to continue to develop the code visualization websites. But before I'm going to talk about frameworks, not a lot, just what I've been thinking about. And then I'm going to probably study React Query. I'm not really sure. I think I'm going to try to do it first with the use effect and then just set up on the backend the function that is going to deliver the graphs. Let me put this timer here first. So I was trying to move to Solid.js, and the reason why is because from what I've seen, it seems like it is better than React, and I think that's the case. And I couldn't move to Solid.js because I'm using Three.js, which uses classes, and I can't think about ways that I could structure things so I can use stars and signals to work with the classes, because all you have to do, I think, is just to, instead of trying to put the classes themselves on the store, you put the values that the values that you want to be reactive from the class in stars. But then the problem is that it would require me to change a bunch of things, and then I started to think that's not worth it because it's not enough high return on investment, because I'm deviating too much from the stuff that I'm doing. And that's the reason why I want to go back to working on the website now, because I think that's, even though the thing is important, it's not the main focus of what I'm trying to do, obviously. But then I realized that actually, why not see if there are other frameworks there that might be good? And then one, like the main alternative, I think, is Preact, which is pretty much it works like the same way that React does, but it's just a different, it's kind of like a different library, but you use a different render. So it's kind of like a custom render for React, as far as I understand now. I haven't studied it too much. But all I have to do is just download, and then instead of using React DOM to render the app, use the Preact. So I'm thinking about that one, and I also started thinking about what can be potential other alternatives, because I realized that why I'm limiting myself to Solid.js, I can look at the other ones as well. Even though if, it might be a lot more effort to refactor everything, maybe it's worth it. So I looked into this other framework called Qwik, and it seems like this one is the best. And then I read from someone on the comments. So the way Qwik works, pretty much, I think, is that the way that websites usually work is that the server delivers the HTML to the client, and then the client has to hydrate, which is to make the JavaScript of the HTML work, or to make the JavaScript parts work. And the way that Qwik works is that they made something that I don't understand very well, but instead of having the JavaScript, instead of hydrating the JavaScript, they do everything on the HTML directly. And then I read someone in the comments saying that this is closing a cycle because it started with raw HTML and now it's going back to HTML, and I think that is probably the case. And this is the reason why I've been thinking about this a lot, because my concern is that React, like, I think React reached its peak recently, is like on the downfall of the cycle, and that's just the natural progression of things. So I think that React now is closing the cycle that jQuery probably started, and in the future is not going to be like that anymore. Like, people are not going to use that. So since I'm building this stuff right now in the beginning, it would be better, obviously, if I chose a framework that's probably going to be, like, it's probably on the beginning, which is more optimal. So I've been thinking about moving to this one. And then I also realized that probably in the future, and I'm not pretty sure how long time is going to take, how much time is going to take, but I think in the very near, like, it depends on how fast AI evolves, obviously, because it's going to affect everything, and then it's going to change the frequency of the cycles, which is this iteration. There's always happens because everything is a spiral, so history repeats itself, but it's never the same. So what I think is going to happen is that the front end is going to be is gonna move towards either WebAssembly or a version of WebAssembly, and eventually everything is gonna be done like that because it's just a lot faster. So it's just some stuff that I'm thinking about, but I think that for now it's probably not worth it. I have to continue with React because it's already working. And the main challenge that I'm gonna have, and this is kind of like the problem because I don't really know for sure. That's like I'm still thinking about this because it might be a problem with the way that I created things here because I'm changing things directly on the Three.js class, and the Three.js class is a part of another object, and I use the main object that has Three.js class as an attribute to change the configurations. So maybe the whole thing is wrong and I should restructure the data structure so that it changes everything. But I'm not really sure. So for now, I'm just gonna continue to do things the way that I'm doing now. Finish that part. But like part of me thinks that it's probably better just choose React and forget about this stuff because it's like the 80-20 rule. Like the state management of the website matters, but it matters a lot more the other stuff because that's the fundamental thing. And I'm not really sure if I'm gonna pivot eventually to not even do something on the browser. Maybe I do something directly with AI or something that is like an executable or software that is not even on the browser. And obviously there's a lot of stuff that can happen, so I think I'm gonna delete this comment here. I just wrote this down so I could create the other function. It's probably not necessary now. So what I'm gonna do now is create another function that serves the graph with the routes. So based on the routes, guess the graph. And then I'm gonna serve the graph to the front end. I'm already serving the folder structure, I think. So I've changed both the front end and back end. Yeah. Like, do I change the whatever? I wrote it like this because I was writing the front ends, but I forgot that there's different. There's different standards on how to write everything. So what I'm doing now on the front end is now is the parts that I'm going to start focusing after. Well, I have to think about. I think I'm going to study React Query first, but after I figure out how to fetch the data with React Query, Then I'm gonna have to. Then it's gonna be the start of the part that I'm gonna think about how to parse the code and how to create the graphs. And maybe I'll do this on a separate project as well. And then I think it's better to focus on that part first before I start focusing on changing this so it works with a database, or maybe I leave it like this for some time. Because I need to establish which graphs are going to be better first, and if it is going to be useful or not first. And that's going to be very hard, I think. So it's probably better to create another project, or use the other project that I already have there to code all the logic of creating graphs. So I think that's for... I do need the project. Maybe I should copy the path again, the way that I did here. The reason why I'm doing on separate files is that maybe based on the request parameters, I want to get something else, get other types of graphs. I'm not really sure how I'm gonna do this. Because it's gonna depend on what kind of graphs. So the idea is I'm gonna get data, and I have to think about now how I'm gonna structure the data. And from this data, I'm gonna pass the graph here instead of passing the way that I'm passing now. There's a lot to think about, so it's kind of hard to... I think the first thing that I have to do is just uncomment this. I'm probably gonna use the function here instead of doing like this. Maybe this has to be async. Or yeah, I think there's just calling a bit. I don't know. Maybe like this is fine. Because obviously I'm gonna switch to the other one. Oh, and then I have to think about the animations and events. Forgot about this. But animations and events are going to be based on logic of like Boolean or numbers that I'm going to pass as with the query parameters, I think. So here I can pass other stuff that determines which animations. So I have to remember kind of like where I stopped, because there's a lot of things going on, so... Like, I remember one of the problems is that because everything is going to be on the same route, I was thinking that I was going to do several different requests to the same page. But now, I think that after I thought about this, then I realized that maybe I don't need to make another request every time they click a file. I can just send another type of request to another endpoint on the backend. So I can create just another function that's another endpoint. And then based on that, I send the information for the file, for example. But this is something that is... I don't remember if I solved this part or not. This is also an annoying thing. Because I need to put all the information of the file, and I remember that this is very annoying because I might have to, it might be complicated. So I have to open the file and then send. I think I'm not gonna focus on this for now. I'm just gonna create the graphs. Because one thing that I have to do is just to put another div here that contains... It's gonna be the same. So it's gonna have this thing here, and then on the side it's gonna have the code for each file. So what I need to do is to, on the request, send the information. So I have to think about... But I think that's not worth it doing now because it's gonna be hard, and it's probably better to solve the other stuff first. But it will be very nice to have the... It would be very nice to have the tags for the file here. So, yeah. Should I do that or not? So what I think I'm gonna have to do is just... So I'm gonna have to choose different types. On this request here, what I can do is just add like a default file. The problem is, how do I select which file is gonna show as the default here? Or maybe I can just... Yeah, I think I don't need to do that. I'm just gonna set a blank page here. Maybe I can set a page that has some like default description that explains some stuff. And then once they click the file, then I can create another endpoint that has another request. But I think like I would want to make this optional. It's probably better to just... I want to focus now more on the parts that matters. So I just want to get this other part done, and then I can focus on... I'm gonna have to study a bunch of Python and see like if I can like what are all the methods, because then and it's kind of funny because it's hard to switch back and forth because of momentum. It's the same with LeetCode that I noticed. Like once I started doing this exercises here again, all I can think about is how I want to do more and more and think about stuff. So where here is kind of the same thing, where after I figure this out, then I have to go back to the other, focusing on the other stuff, which is gonna be in Python. Obviously I can use the AST method that I already used to create abstract syntax trees from the code, but I want to understand how Python changes the code based on the architecture. And I think that they probably have different versions. You can install different versions depending on the architecture. This is something that I want to do, and I want to clarify more how Python works. I think I'm going to have to study manually. The way that I was thinking before is like figure out the C compiler, then from the C compiler create a graph. But I think that's just too slow, because it's a lot harder to build everything in C because you have to worry about the memory and the types. So Python is a lot faster to write stuff. So I think it makes more sense to study manually. So let's see if I just call here, it works. And then I remove the button there. So I think for now I'm gonna leave it like this for the animation, and I'm just gonna get the graph. Because animation is another thing that is like probably just another complication. I should just focus on getting the graph now and optimizing the thing to use the React query. So let me see if this works. Yeah, it works. So I'm just gonna remove this button. So let me think. So now I have two options, I think. One is to start studying React theory and try to implement. No, the other one, I have to create the graph function first. It makes more sense. So instead of being API projects, it's going to be API graphs. And then here I'm doing this thing here to validate the inputs. Because if someone puts something else here, if they put Python code, for example, on the thing, I want to make sure that, and obviously there's always the risk, but I want to make sure that they can't do anything. So I'm just getting the values and then validating them. Then I got the root path based on this function. So let me think. API graphs. It's gonna be Python. So the name of the project, this is another complication that I don't know really well. Because obviously I'm doing it with a file here, but then I think the best is probably to move to a database. But then the question is, at what point should I move everything? because the biggest thing now that I'm thinking is that I should just, because I'm doing all this work and I'm not doing the main fundamental thing that I want to do, which is just to figure out how to parse the codes and to create the graphs, which can be viewed as something completely detached from all this stuff. This is more for the front end. I pretty sure like the stuff that I want to do is probably not even necessary to have graphs. It is necessary to have the data structure, but not the visualization part. Some of the stuff, then obviously for a part of the stuff that I want to do, then the visualization is very important because it allows you to see everything. But for creating the graph data structure, then it's more about the stuff that there's a lot of uncertainty because I have to study a lot. I have the vision on my mind of the things that I want to do, but it's very complex. Then I have to clarify the details to see if I can put everything together. Because it's also like a general vision is not very clear on the details of how exactly I'm gonna do that. So I think for now I'm just gonna put the file as the name and then it's so the question is, how should I send the response? So I think I should put on a try start block to try to open the file, and then I get the nodes and edges. So this data structure here, I was thinking that it's gonna be, it has to be something that has multiple different graphs. Because in here I'm going to, inside of this one, or this one, I'm gonna select, this is just the folder tree. So inside of this one, actually I was doing based on the store. Oh fuck. I think I was gonna create, now I remember, I created another store so that, maybe I should change the names here. It's kind of confusing. Because here, I have to change, so the first thing that I have to do is change the store. So the idea is I receive the graph from the backend, then I pass as a props, and then from the props I'm gonna receive eventually multiple different graphs. And that's gonna be the main data structure. So I think the first thing that I wanna think about is what kind of data structure. That's the first thing. So, but roughly it's gonna be probably an object, and the object is gonna have different types of graphs. And then from all the possible graphs, I'm gonna initialize the store, which is an external store. And then this component is gonna be the manager. So I set everything up on the store, and then I initialize the graph components. So here I have to think about like what logic, and this is the challenges because I don't know what kind of graphs I have. So I'm not really sure. Like maybe it's better to just leave one graph. So I do the data structure, like I design roughly like the superficial version of how the data structure is gonna be. So just an object, and then I just put AST graph, for example. I think it's just gonna be key value pairs, and then the key is the type of graph, and the value is going to be an object as well. And I think that the file I leave for the another route on the backend, and then in the future I just do another call here if I want. But the call is going to be it's definitely going to be on the files. Every time they click a file, it makes a call to the route. So yeah, I think the first thing they should do is just the simple version. So let me think if there's anything else that I'm forgetting. Oh, the other thing is that I'm gonna have is just the the logic for selecting which animations and events to display with the graph or to allow. So the thing is that I can have probably multiple different. So I think this logic is probably gonna be here. Maybe I should separate the logics. So I should create another route. Or maybe it shouldn't even be. Yeah, I think it shouldn't even be on the backend. Because I'm gonna design all the events here. And the animations. So eventually I can just create here. Let me think about what names. Oh no, this was the... I confused that one with the other one. Oh, I just realized as well, as I was moving everything to solid, that there's some functions here that I don't need. So I'm gonna have to think about... But I think I'll figure this out. I'll remove them later. The thing about the other frameworks is that, like, if I can find another framework that... I think probably what I'm most likely I'm gonna do is just after I build a bunch of stuff, after I work more on the graphs and like I have this whole setup fixed or made, then I'm probably gonna just move to Preact, because there isn't much you have to do. And then after, on that point, I think about whether or not it's worth it to move to another one. The main thing that is gonna make me move or not, I think, is gonna be how easy it is to use classes. So I'm just thinking about the... Oh, this is something else that I'm thinking. Maybe I'll just leave here for now. But on the other one, I removed this thing here because I realized that it doesn't matter at all. I'm not gonna... It's not the direction I'm gonna go, so... anymore. So let me think. Maybe it should be current nodes and current edges. Just gonna put everything on the same thing. So yeah. So another thing that I'm gonna have to put on the data structure that I'm setting is which one is the default. So maybe I can encode that based on the... Because the project here is gonna change based on the parameters, or based on the parameters. It's just this ID here. Let me think about this. So maybe I can create an additional thing there. So now I'm thinking, because I think that the best way to structure this, so let's say on the front end I have like 5 different types of graphs, and then I want to display a different one as a default. Or I have like 10 types of graphs and I want to show just 5. Yeah, actually let me think. Maybe this way is not the best. It's probably better to just encode in another parameters. So instead of sending like all the graphs, I just send one graph. But yeah, maybe that's better actually. So I have to think about what kind of optimizations, like what kind of customization I wanna do here. So I'm thinking that maybe this is not necessary, the other star. Maybe I confused the two of them. Or for some reason I didn't think about this. I have to remember what I was thinking before. Because what I want to do is just, I'm going to have another customization component that is outside. And the other customization component is going to be, it's going to change different things on the graph itself. So maybe when you navigate, so I think pagination and filtering is the main, like the easiest ones to think about. But that's for the same graph. And the thing is that I can just make other stuff. I think the way that I was thinking is probably bad. I don't need this other store. Question is how, whether or not I'm gonna like put functionality here to select. I don't remember. Maybe for the events and the animation makes sense. But even then, what I can do is just put more. I can put more parameters on the query there, and based on those ones, I put the logic on the back end of which graphs should send and which events should show, which animations should show. Yeah, so I think that's probably, I was thinking about the wrong way. Is it the other components can be the reason why it's confusing is because of the thing that I just said, that to understand this, I need to know more what types of graphs I'm gonna have. Like, I need to have more clarity on how I'm going to structure the graphs to create the visualizations. Because the main point of this one is going to be to allow for the customization between different types of graphs. So the customization on the graph itself is done inside of the graph components, which is inside of this one. And the customization outside is gonna be based on this component here. It's gonna contain the filtering. But the more I think about it, maybe I was thinking about it the wrong way, I think. Because I can do everything based on... I'm trying to remember why did I think about creating this router. I think it's just because I was gonna have multiple different graphs. And then when I want to select different graphs. Now the question is when they click a file or when they highlight text, for example. But then I don't need this one, I can just use the other, this component here. So maybe this one's a bad idea. I think I'm just gonna go back to the other one. I just realized this. I think this one is not necessary, but this one is. So I'm probably still gonna use the store, but it's just gonna be different. Because what I can do is just put all the information on the thing here. So one question that I have to ask that I'm not really sure how to do. So I'm gonna actually look onto in the React DOM documentation is how to put default parameters on the query here. It's not gonna be that hard, I think. And then I can send with the project, I can send the name, or I can send other information that determines what kind of events is gonna show, and I can encode all the information here, or what kind of graphs that I'm gonna get. So instead of doing things like this here, I can just get some other RFID, for example, or graph name. They're always gonna convert to lower. And then here I can create a how would I do it here? What would be the best way? It's probably just to map on the... Yeah, but this is the... Yeah, so for each thing I have to, instead of creating the thing, I need to create a folder. And then on the folder I have multiple different types of graphs. Yeah, that's the way. You know, I wanna think about this, so obviously later is easier to change things if I have to. But at the same time, I want to do the smallest amounts of work possible now. So I can start working on creating the graphs instead. And I have to think about an easy way to iterate this, because it's going to be kind of annoying. Because obviously I'm going to open the other project to create the graphs. And then I have to... I'm going to need the front end and the back end, and then to replace the graphs here, to test each graph each time. So maybe I should build like a small version just directly on using Three.js and not using any library. Or maybe even, maybe I can look up other, obviously I can use C++, use the engines, but then that's gonna be a question of how much time I'm gonna put. I think it's not worth it probably, but I have to think about an easy way to iterate this, so every time that I build a graph I can just look at how it's gonna be. But I think that this way is probably fine. I can just use one graph here and always have the same name, and then I just test multiple different things. And then as I test things, then I'm gonna obviously write down everything and like continue to think about how to iterate. Probably, so what I'm gonna do now is just this, and then I'm gonna put the graph name here. And this is gonna get whatever graph is inside of this folder. And then I open. I have to remember how to, I think it's with open. Then graph directory. You should probably use JSON dump. And I always forget on maybe delete something that I need there. Oh, it's because of this. I always forget if it's JSON.loads or JSON.load. So this is two different graphs, two different paths. So now another question. I think before, maybe I should study React Theory before, because I know React Theory is gonna have, it's much better to do multiple requests with React Theory, I think. So that's probably what I'm gonna do now. Just gonna, the question is how can I guess I can just change the thing there, the path there on the front end, and then I can test here to see. But, so, should create the dictionary first. So let's do like this. Actually, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, why did I think that is necessary to do this here? There must be a reason, or maybe I was just confused thinking about all the other stuff. I'm just gonna go back now. See if I can put everything on one line. Because it makes a lot more sense to just do everything based on the parameters. And then because that's gonna leave me a lot more space to create the logic on the backend of how to select each thing. Maybe one challenge with that is gonna be that different projects is gonna have like, yeah, I guess that's probably the reason why I was thinking about this. I think this is the main thing that is kind of hard to, because the problem here is that this page is gonna be used regardless of which project it is. It's just gonna change the language and the project eventually, but first I'm gonna focus on Python, so I'm just gonna change the project. But maybe Yeah, because any other page that I'm gonna do is just gonna be the same idea, I think. So you have one page that is the template that serves all the other pages, and the difference between them is what you get from this hook here, which allows you to get the pattern that it is here, and then you obviously create the other links based on the pattern that you want there. So the challenge is, like, if I create, are there going to be situations where for different projects I want to display or want to organize the graphs in a different way? I think that's the... But even for then, I think that's probably not going to happen. I think it makes more sense to do everything based on the query parameters. And then if I want, all I have to do is just change the logic on other places to send other information based on the routes that they go. I think probably the best way to design is by thinking completely different, like as if I want to decouple the front end from the back end, because it has to be. Maybe later on I don't need, or there are other things that it's possible to do. I definitely think that's the case. That doesn't involve the front end, so the back end should be done thinking about allowing people to use it regardless of whether or not they're interfacing with the website. I think that's probably the best idea. So given that's the case, I think that all the functions should be designed based on parameters that they receive on the request. That's probably the best. And then on the front end, it doesn't matter to have the other component, I think. Let me think more about this. I think actually it makes sense. I have to do the other one, now that I think about it. Because I think this is the reason why I thought about doing this one. It's not just for the... It feels kind of pointless though. But maybe I don't need to do it. Because the main reason is going to be that this component has the other one that's going to be the customization, and then they're going to be linked based on the store. The question is, when I want a different graph, like what happens? Because if I do another request, then it's going to call this page again. That's the problem. So the question is, how do I pass a different types of nodes and edges? Yeah, this is the issue. And I think that there is a better way than the way that I was thinking about it, but I do think it makes sense now. And the main problem is that when I change a customization on this component, I want to change what graph is going to be shown, and then if I do it based on the request, I have to make it... I'm going to make another request based on... But I guess I can just make through a different endpoint. So maybe it doesn't matter. But if I make the request to another endpoint, so how do I connect this one with this one? Because this one is going to be receiving based on the props here. And if that's the case, then... I think this is why I created another layer, because if I do it based on the store, then it allows me to put extra logic there. Because then the graph is not dependent on the... Yeah, maybe it is better to do it the other way. So, but it's not... The point is not to select the graphs. I think that's the thing. The point is just to allow this component to change the the nodes and edges that this is going to be displayed without calling this page again. So I want to decouple this page. So, but I do think that it makes sense to create other routes, but then like to create, yeah, other routes that are going to select the graph. Or maybe I call the endpoints, but with a different parameter. Because the request doesn't necessarily need to be, the logic of the request doesn't need to be coupled with this thing here. I can just select different variables to pass instead of passing one that is connected. So I think that makes more sense. Yeah, but this way it does make sense, I think. I'm just gonna change the... Let's create ones. So here, we can do this. See if it works. Maybe I should write down this stuff somewhere so I don't forget about this. Eventually, obviously, it's not gonna be confusing because there's gonna be other logic here, so it's gonna be more clear. I think it's already confusing anyway, but it's just the complexity of everything. But eventually, it's gonna be more clear because there's gonna be more logic here, I think. But I think that here I just need maybe the events and the animation as well. I have on this one. Maybe I should just forget about the events and the animation for now. Well, I'm trying to think if there is anything else that I want to do. Maybe I should write this down here, right, as a comment on this one to remember. Isn't kind of dumb though, because the thing is I can just it's like I said, I don't need to attach the request that I make to the backend based on the but I do need, because it needs to re-render, that's the thing. So this is just kind of a wrapper. Maybe instead of graph router I put graph wrapper. It's more, but this name is already, yeah, this is already graph wrapper. And maybe I change the name of this one, and then I put this one as a graph wrapper. I think that makes more sense. I'll think about the names later. Yeah, like the only way is, I think, because I can't get the values of the context directly here, I think. I mean, maybe I can just, but I'm not really sure. I think just to be safe is better to create the other component. Because obviously I can put this store and then dots, nodes and edges or something like that. So I do think that I need this one. You can pass directly here from the store after it creates the store. Just pass the values here. Yeah, but I think here, doing here is probably better. Oh, that's the problem. So maybe if I just put like this now. Oh, so this is why I was gonna use the use effect here. Because I wanna put some, but maybe it has to be done on the store. Or maybe it's not necessary, just leave it like this. And then whenever... Yeah, later on I can put probably on the other components. Or I put the default ones here. Set the animation and events to be whatever ones I want to display as the defaults. Maybe, let me think, because this is another thing. The issue with setting here is then obviously, I think it triggers more renderings. Because then I would have to put inside of the use effects. So obviously I can make based on this and then, but these ones are gonna depend. I think like this is fine because then this depends. The default doesn't matter that much anyway, so. So what do I want to do now? So now let me think. One option is to I think I'm just gonna change the thing here. And then pass another one, and I'm gonna test to see if I receive the graph or not. I have to think about it. Just gonna create another. Eventually, I'm gonna do everything in the same. I think. I'm gonna just replace this graph structure with graph data or something like that. I have to think about what is the best way to merge the animations and events with the graph. Maybe it does make sense to just create another state here, and then I make them separate from each other. Because then later on can create different endpoints. I'm gonna put graph data for now. Or maybe just graph. I'm trying to think about an easy way that I can just test to see if this is gonna work or not. And so here I'm gonna put... I have to think about... so the name is gonna be on the path. And then is there anything else that I wanna... It's very difficult because, like, everything that I do, I have to think about the whole thing again. So, like, it's difficult because there's a lot of uncertainty on the other stuff. That's the problem. So I just have to get to the parts that I'm... So I'm just gonna put nodes and edges here, but I'm not really sure about this. The problem is obviously if I wanna do other stuff. But I think I can just leave this one to get one specific graph. And then later on, if I want, I can just change the parameters. And then I just encode the logic on the folder structure. Or I can just like do other stuff with the parameters here. And then do control flow. Yeah, I'm just gonna do it like this for now. And so this one is going to return the graph, the nodes and edges for the current graph, based on whatever parameters is passed on the request. I think I'm going to remove this stuff here, just using before to test everything. So I think I'm going to manually put here and then I just set the... So I'm gonna console log the response data. And comment this one out. And then I'm just gonna set the current graph with the response. Because obviously what I wanna do is just check to see if the function on the backend is working. If it is working, then I'm gonna change this to work with React query instead. And then I'm just gonna read the documentation. So let me see how much time. Maybe I should read the documentation later. After I stop streaming. So maybe it's probably better to, after I test this, I should start... I think an easy way... No, the way that I was testing before is to put the graph... Maybe a good idea would be to... Yeah, I think actually that's a very good idea, just So like one thing that I can do is just create a minimal version of what I'm doing without all the other stuff, just to visualize the graph on another framework like these ones. And then I can kill two birds with one stone, because I can learn the other frameworks while creating something just to test the graphs. That's actually the best idea, actually. So probably what I'm gonna do next stream is just create a simple app with quick, and then I can create like a minimal version of this that is just gonna display the graphs. And then I'm gonna build on separate project as well. There's this project here is the one that I was using to create the AST graph. So I think I'm gonna continue on this one. And probably I'm gonna do that now. So I'm gonna test this, then I start focusing on this part. Or maybe just stop streaming and then I'll study the stuff, and then next stream I try to do the other framework with the other simple version with quick. And then what I'm gonna do is just iterate based on this one. So create the graphs on this one, test on the other one, just see how they look. Then based on that, I can start to clarify what stuff might be good. Then once I have an idea, then I go back to this other stuff here. Yeah. I think it's graph name like this. Okay, no such file or directory. So API, graphs, Python, pandas. Oh, it has to be JSON. I think should put JSON on the backend. And so after I test here and see, I'm just gonna leave like this. It's just gonna return one graph based on the path that they pass, based on the parameters. I mean, it's just gonna be an object with nodes and edges. And then on the front end, I set, if it is the correct way, I just set the state with the graph, and then I just use this one. I'm just gonna I was using the other one to test. So if that works, then I move to the other parts. So it's just gonna, because it's just gonna be faster to test if I have a minimal version where I don't have to think about all the other stuff. Yeah, I have to think about, so because obviously, like now that I have all the code, obviously I can just put the code anywhere I want, which is the nice part about it. So, like obviously I can get the whole code for the component as well and just create it on the other framework. But yeah, it's gonna depend on how the other framework works. But I think that it's probably better to try to create this minimal version where I can just replace the graph. So the way that I'm thinking about it is just on this project here, the way that I was doing, I was running main, and then each time I create one graph, and then I just swap the files, and then it would show on the other project how it looks like. I think that's probably the fastest way to test. And then I'm just gonna forget about this other one and just gonna focus on these parts and try to iterate to see what kind of graphs I can create they're gonna be useful. And probably the first thing I'm gonna do is just try to do some stuff with lead code, because then I can kill two birds with one stone. So as I study to be better algorithms, I can just use this stuff. So maybe I should move some of this code to the other folder. I forgot how to do this. Isn't this... I think he's talking about this one. So I have to print this one. And maybe if I put like this. Maybe this is low, it's not low. I'm pretty sure I can initialize the nodes as with this thing. So why is this not working? Hmm. Oh, maybe it's because it is a dictionary. No, but that wouldn't make sense because... let me just try again and see what happens. Now it works. So I guess it's just because I was accessing with the dots. But yeah. And so now I just sat there. And hopefully it works. Hmm. So the only explanation is that it's not re-rendering. So I have to think about. So obviously I don't want to put here because then it's just gonna be a loop. How can I do this? Yeah. So the problem here is that this is async, and then when it renders everything, it doesn't have the thing, and then it doesn't re-render. But I'm not really sure why, because okay, I'm setting the state here, so it should diff based on this. So what's going on? Oh, it's because I don't have the thing, probably. Yeah, there we go. So no, but now it's fucking up this thing. It's undefined. Oh, it's because of the data. Yeah, obviously. So oh, it's because, well, let me think. Yeah, so I have two comments here. Maybe you should just change now. I was thinking about changing later because I didn't remember what props they put here. Yes, it's gonna be. I'm passing as data, so. Oh, but then I don't remember if it's gonna change on the other ones. Oh, here. I think it doesn't matter. I was just passing like this because it was easier, hopefully. The thing, yeah, here I have to change. Maybe it's better to just leave like that. 'Cause now it's kind of confusing. Obviously, this is not hard, it's just annoying. So if I pass this data, just leave data here. But then it's kind of weird because I think I'm just gonna leave it like this. Thing is, I'm not gonna be. Maybe I should write a comment to remember. Yeah. I think I'm gonna change the comment there so I remember that I changed the name here. So now I can either start studying the Python parts or I can just stop streaming here and then go do all this other stuff of stream. What I want to do now is just replace, instead of doing with the function, I just use React Query instead. Once I figure that out, then I'm gonna do the other parts. I'm not really sure. Yeah, maybe it is interesting to do this on stream. What I'm gonna do is what I'm gonna do is study or try to clarify what things in Python I can use that is gonna make it easier to create the graphs based on breaking down the code. So it's gonna be about finding patterns on the code and then creating a graph structure based on the patterns. That's the thing that I want to clarify. But in order to do that, I have to think about what kind of things I need to. What kind of things can I use to build the graph, and what exactly do I want? I'm gonna leave this for later. So maybe one thing that I can do is get a project. I have to think about like what kind of project would be interesting to study first. Actually, LeetCode. Obviously LeetCode. So I'm gonna guess the stuff that I found on GitHub from the other project. So yeah, I think this is gonna be the goal. That's probably the best direction to go. So what I'm gonna do from now on is maybe, so the way, and I was thinking about this before as well, because I thought about that I should probably, but I was thinking more about doing this off stream. So every single day devote like half an hour for a LeetCode problem and then look at the solution later. I was gonna do that, but I was thinking more about doing that off stream. But now maybe I'll still do off stream sometimes. But I think that it probably will be a good idea to just spend half an hour on the project or on LeetCode thing. Then look at the solution, and then on the other time work on this stuff here. So I have a bunch of solutions from LeetCode, from some repositories I found on GitHub. And what I can do is just pass this to the other thing. And now I focus on the iteration. So I forget about all the other stuff and I just focus on this project here. And the thing is, yeah, I'm gonna focus only, I was gonna say that I can do it for the other languages as well. Maybe it is interesting to focus on JavaScript because obviously I can build everything on Python, and it's like the only thing I have to change is the way that I'm gonna parse the information based on the syntax of the other languages. Yeah, so now I'm gonna separate on, but I think I'm gonna focus on Python first. So based on these steps here, I have to organize what I'm gonna do next. So yeah, maybe it's better to put this on the front end thing. I'm gonna remove this from here, just put here. Yeah, so first, before I do the other stuff, I think it's better to try to create the thing. So what I'm gonna try to do is just create a simple page that displays the visualization of the graph that I built, but I'm gonna do it with Quick. See if I can do it. Then once I have that, then I'm going to structure based on a file that I'm going to put there. And the file is going to be the current graph that I'm analyzing. Then once I have that, then I'm going to focus on the other projects and iterate on this. And I think I'm going to do it with the LeetCode solutions first. So the goal is to be able to create a graph data structure that is going to encode information of the solutions. It's going to allow me to learn in a faster way. That's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to stop here. I think I'm going to watch these videos off stream, and I'm going to try to study React. I'm going to study React Query documentation and then try to incorporate React Query now. Yeah. And then after I do that, I'm gonna start on the other stuff. So I'm probably gonna stream 2 days from now, and yeah, next time I'm gonna try to build a simple version with Quick. After that, depending on how long it takes, obviously, I'm going to start focusing on the other projects of getting all the elite code solutions and then trying to extract information from them. I'm not pretty sure if the elite code solutions are the best because it's just algorithms, but I think it will be like an interesting thing, and I'm probably gonna have to spend a bunch of time like studying the source code of Python and also trying to find different methods and libraries I can use to extract different information from the code. So maybe I'll do that on stream as well. So probably gonna be back 2 days from now.